All right, so I guess we'll go ahead and get started now. Thanks everyone for joining us here today. So my name is Will Halley. I am a product specialist at Rumsey. I cover the Hoffman brand, so enclosures, any kind of thermal cooling or filter fans, heat exchangers, that kind of product. And then I also do industrial controls, sensors, and safety. So just a quick overview of the topics that we want to cover today. The title of the presentation obviously had a lot to do with cooling, but there's a few other points that we want to just kind of touch on while we're here, of some updates to Hoffman and Vent in the last 6 months to a year. So about 6 to 8 months ago, Hoffman bought a company that was based out of Europe that had an IEC offering. And a lot of it runs parallel to the traditional products that they offer, but everything is available with global ratings. So you can see anything from a small terminal blocks to a wall mount enclosure to a modular floor standing, similar to the ProLine series. If anyone listening is familiar with that, they have available in a product that meets a global offering. If you're an OEM or you're an end user that has requirements to use a single product in various parts of the world, or you need to meet a rating that a traditional component that you would use in the States doesn't, they do not have that availability. And here are just some lists of applications and markets that this type of thing could come into account on. Really any kind of end user, OEM or panel shop that has a requirement for these. We see a lot of requests come in for this kind of product, and now we do have a significant offering for it. So the floor standing modular option here, for single bay options, you can get up to an IP66 rating. They have a full line of accessories as well, and then as you bay the doors together, you can get up to an IP55 rating. And you can extend these pretty much as long as you want, so you can really get a truly modular enclosure. So very similar to the ProLine series, which we sell a lot of, and I mentioned before. So once again, here's just an overview of the wall mount options, similar to maybe like a concept style box or just a standard NEMA enclosure, but once again, carrying those ratings that allow you to use it in any market across the world. And then you can see down here all of the accessories that go with it too. So once again, just really a full offering there. A new program that Hoffman started within the last about 6 to 8 months, as well as the Express Mod, and essentially it's for simple holes and cutouts, and they can ship within 10 days of approval. So if you have a drawing, or you have something relatively simple, not it has to be a standard product that's modified. It can't have different dimensions than typical or anything too crazy. And there's more than 1,500 products that meet those requirements, and they can ship that within 10 days of approval. So essentially 2 weeks, and it would be on its way to you, as opposed to previously you were looking at several weeks. So a significant reduction in shipping time there. And overall, it's a relatively simple process. You pick your standard product, no matter what that is, whether it's a small junction box or a standard wall mount or freestanding enclosure. You add your cutouts. Hopefully you have a CAD drawing or something similar, at least some sort of drawing to indicate what those cutouts would be, and then you can pick your color. You have a choice of up to 28 different colors. These are the most common ones. Anything outside of that would extend the lead time. And there's a note right there that you can't do painted stainless steel products in the Express Mod program. So just another clarification on what you can and can't do here. You can't do a size change, so you're locked into those height, width, and depth dimensions on the standard products. And there's just a few requirements there that you can't do anything too crazy. But once again, this is relatively simple modifications done fast, so you can get those really quick. A program that's been around for a year is Hoffman On Demand, and essentially what that is it's a way for customers to see what is locally stocked through Hoffman's website, and you can, if something isn't exactly stocked, you can find a product that is very similar to that. So if you had you know, a box that was a NEMA 412 box that was, let's say, 30 by 30 by 12, you would very easily be able to see on Hoffman's website, hey, that specific box isn't stocked, but there's a 30 by 30 by 16 that is probably stocked at your local distributor, which would be Rumsey. And if you combine that with our web store, you can find that information really fast. And this applies to basically everything that Hoffman offers, whether it's a small enclosure, an AC unit, a filter fan, they're all on there. Essentially, you'll see that there's a banner at the top of Hoffman's website, and then there is some drop-down arrows that'll help you refine your search to keep it within a product that is Hoffman On Demand. So if you needed something same day or within 2 days, and you said, I have a little bit of leeway on what I can get away with, this can be a really helpful tool and save significant shipping costs, because everyone knows that shipping a large enclosure can get expensive fast. So here's what you'll see on a product web page. Say, hey, this is not a Hoffman On Demand enclosure, but hey, this is 36 by 42 by 12, but if we add 6 inches to the width, that is a Hoffman On Demand product, and that is very likely stock at your local distributor. And on the items drop down on the product page, they'll show you everything. That little red logo with a truck lets you know that it's part of the Hoffman On Demand program. Anything that's just a standard little black SKU will not be a standard product. And then when you click on the logo, it'll help you locate your distributor. Typically, we're probably dealing with a lot of people locally, and that'll direct you to Rumsey. But if you were maybe at a job out of state or on the really anywhere in the country, it'll be able to direct you to someone locally who has that product in stock. So here's just another example. You have a 24 by 24 by 12 316 stainless box that is not available, but there's a 304 stainless available. So relatively simple example, but just to kind of help expand on that idea. And now as we get into the part of the webinar that was kind of a little bit more advertised, the thermal audits and the new selection tool. So essentially, Rumsey has the ability to do virtual audits, whether it's through FaceTime or whether it's just you sending all of the information on the enclosures and the situation that you have. But pictures, descriptions, dimensions, and what the internal components, the ambient temperature, these are all things that we can take into account and give you a detailed report of products that could help fix your heating and cooling needs. In addition, if you want, we can also do thermal imaging and really get more in depth if needed. But there's a YouTube video on this that when you get the PowerPoint after this, you will be able to see that it's a relatively simple process. There's some safety things to keep in mind, but overall, it's a relatively painless process. And like I said, we can either do that in person if it's required, obviously taking the proper precautions, or virtually, which has been more common recently. So the new thermal tool that Hoffman has, obviously, most people on this call probably know that heat's the #1 enemy of electronics and control panels reduces life, reduces reliability of products, especially expensive ones like PLCs, drives, soft starters, all that stuff that's expensive that, that heat can really kill or reduce the lifetime of. And the new tool has the ability to allow you to save a lot of time and headache in calculating what kind of heating or cooling unit you would need to keep those products at the optimal temperature. Overall, it's a very intuitive tool. The legacy tool was a little bit more complicated. There were some things on it that weren't necessarily intuitive. There were some portions where it would get kind of lengthy, and there were some fields that you didn't need to fill out, but you may have thought you did, and it could throw off the end report that you get, which is just a really concise PDF that'll give you product suggestions. And now I'm going to go to the website and walk you guys through an application. So hopefully everyone can see my screen now. So obviously this is the new website. You can either Google Hoffman cooling tool, nVent cooling tool, or you can just keep in mind that this is the website, coolingselection.nvent.com. So obviously up here at the top, most of these are going to stay the same. Language, region, measurement. You can either do Celsius or Fahrenheit, BTU or watts. I typically like to keep it in watts because if you look at most user manuals, they typically, like if there's a VFD user manual, they'll typically measure the power dissipation in watt loss. So it's a lot easier that way. So for this example, I had a 30 by 30 by 20 enclosure, but you can obviously change those as you see fit. And up here, it'll update the total surface area. Right here is where you would be mounting the cooling unit. So if you're mounting it on the side or the front of the enclosure, anywhere. And then enclosure surfaces not allowing heat transfer. This is typically one of the things that gets the most questions. So typically like a wall mount enclosure would not be allowing heat transfer on the back. If it was mounted in a corner, it would be the back and one side. A freestanding enclosure would typically be the back and the bottom. Hopefully you can kind of visualize what I'm talking about there. But when we get into definitions of what's allowing or not allowing heat transfer, typically it's about a 1-inch space between the enclosure and the wall. So if you're standing off there, there's probably some heat transfer being allowed. But if you're like me, you typically like to play it safe. And just a standard wall mount enclosure, I will typically say that the back is not allowing heat transfer, even if there is a little bit of space there. But yeah, so enclosure color, typically gray, light colors, white, metallic, black. If it doesn't have your exact color, you're going to pick the one that's closest to the color that you need. Really, when you get into the black or metallic colors, those are the ones that, especially if the enclosure is outside, can absorb a lot of sunlight and really increase the temperature. But if you had a yellow enclosure, you would just pick light colors, standard. Most of our enclosures are going to be gray. Location, indoor, outdoor, that's relatively straightforward. Insulated, yes or no. Typically, for the ones we deal with, it's going to be no, but if you say yes, they're going to ask you for the R value or the insulation value. I'll go back to no just for this application. Power, once again, relatively straightforward. So here's where we kind of get into the specifics of kind of the meat and potatoes of the selection tool. So max temperature outside enclosure, this is just a generic example, so we can pick anything. We can say 110. Max desired temperature inside enclosure, we'll just put 80. So in this application, we're going below ambient. And that's important because that means that we're going to have to use an air conditioner unit. We can't use a standard, just a little filter fan. Minimum temperature outside, below 50, no. And when we get here, we look for the heat load. So for this example, I am going to pick just a PowerFlex drive, just a 520 series, which is one of our most common ones. So if you go to the technical document on almost any Rockwell product that dissipates heat, you can do a search for either watts or heat loss, and it'll come up. So here you can see all the different drives in the second column from the right. It just tells you exactly how much heat you're losing per drive. So let's pick a 30 amp 480 volt drive. My heat loss is 387 watts. So there we are. Obviously I'm going below ambient, so it's going to give me a closed loop product. Closed loop meaning air conditioner, open loop meaning a filter fan with both a fan and an exhaust grill on the other side. So I click here and it will give me a product that meets my needs. And I can export that. Into a nice little PDF that either you can use or you can send to a customer. Now, if I go back here and I change this to above ambient, it will now give me an option for an open loop product. So I can now use a filter fan. That's the important thing to keep in mind. Just above or below ambient, it can make your life a lot easier if you can use a filter fan. And typically a lot of these filter fans and even a lot of these air conditioners run these stocks. So if you needed something on short notice, if you said, hey, I need to put a drive in a box and I need it today or tomorrow, we would typically have a lot of these components in stock. And then we could also use the on-demand options too, the Hoffman on-demand program, which I mentioned earlier, to kind of tweak and find something that was in stock that either met or exceeded your requirements in terms of cooling. So if you know your heat load, it's easiest here. So like I said, you can go into the user manual. If you wanted to do multiple drives, you could. If you wanted to, you could just add them up and put them into that screen on your own. Bars get. Or you can do it. There are multiple ways to do it. You can check the temperature from inside, outside the enclosure, or you can add each component individually, giving all of the specs, the efficiency. So typically how much heat how much energy they are wasting as heat. If you have a less efficient product, typically the products that we put in our enclosures, the Allen Bradley ones, are highly efficient. And you can add all of them here, and then it'll allow you to pick out your product. So right here is just a little tab that will take you to the product page. So as you can see here on the banner, this is a Hoffman on-demand product, which means that your local distributor very likely stocks it. And all of the spec information as well. Right here, you can click on distributor. And there you go. So overall, relatively simple process, and it's all tied into each other on their website. So at this point, I'll open it up to any questions. Does anyone have any questions about the cooling tool or any of the other products that I went over or programs that I went over today?
So Will, there's the fans and air conditioners that'll come up on that. Will it come up with any of the other cooling devices also? As far as, like, I know, doesn't Indent have some other things that are out there?
Yeah, they have you can pick options for heat exchangers and things of that nature. There are like vortex coolers. Really anything could be included on this. It's just the obviously the AC units and the filter fans are the two that we see the most often. They're the most common and typically the ones that we stock the most of. So go up here. Yeah, one of the nice things about the new tool is that it kind of narrows your selection for you. The older tool, it used to give you almost too many options. So you would get 15 options for a selection, and it could almost be overwhelming. Now it's typically down to two or three. Um,
Just from your experience with using it, is there anything that you can see being done incorrectly by people using it or by you using it? Or is it pretty much foolproof, so to speak?
for the most part, I mean, as long as you know the ambient temperatures, if you're not any significant miscalculation there or some issue with understanding how heat transfer works, hopefully I made that relatively clear earlier. But it's basically if a part of the enclosure is against a wall that is blocking heat from getting out. So just a standard enclosure is going to dissipate some heat, even if it doesn't have an air conditioner or any kind of heat sink. Some heat will get out, but typically that's one of the things that can be overlooked is neglecting that, and then not knowing the temperature or the heat load correctly. One of the nice things about a lot of the products that we sell, like I said, a lot of the Rockwell products is that they make that information readily available in all of their user manuals. So um, whether it's a drive or like a little control transformer, it's all right there, and you can typically just search for heat, watts, efficiency, things like that, and you'll be able to find that information pretty easily. So
Great. And you'll be sending out links to all of this information so we don't have to memorize it right now?
yep, it'll all be in the follow-up email. So let's see. I think I had one more slide here at the end. Yeah, so that's all I have. On our Rumsey landing page for our webinar series, we have a full schedule for upcoming webinars, and all of the recordings, including this one, are on our YouTube channel. So they're available to view if you missed this or wanted to pass this along to someone else. And with that, I think that's all I have. If there's any more questions.